Hey guys, it's Jennifer with the Passionate Papery Company. I made a Barbie inspired journal and I hope you like it. So I start with a piece of fabric. It can be any fabric that you have. I have laid it down on a piece of plastic and I ironed it. And so basically what I'm going to do is take a glue and water mixture and I'm going to paint the glue all over the fabric because I'm going to add a piece of tissue paper on top of this, a crinkly piece of pink tissue because it's Barbie inspired, and lay that down and get it all smoothed out. And then I'm going to take my glue mixture, and I'm going to glue over top of that again, and I'm going to let it dry overnight, and that will be the book cover. So next I'm going to pick out the papers for my signature. I dyed some pink and purple papers and some encyclopedia pages and some doilies, and here are some cardstock pieces that I picked out that I also wanted to go into the journal. And so then I just start folding everything and picking out what order that they're going to go in and just sort of make the signature. And once I get the signature made, then I decided that I was going to sew around the edges, all of it, all over every paper, because I love sewing in the paper. So I did that and cut the strings off of it and folded it all together in a signature. And then I'm going to take the cover that was dried from last night. I'm going to peel it off that plastic and I'm going to set it aside because I'm going to make the actual cover, which is made out of chipboard and an old cereal box that I had. I'm going to use the spine of the book. The cardboard cereal box is the spine of the journal, and so I'm just cutting out a strip for the signature to fit in. And then I just make sure that the signature fits pretty good inside of that. I curve the paper up, the cardboard piece up, because I want it to fit pretty snugly around my journal, and so it does. And then I take a pencil and I mark the edges of where my signature is, the top and the bottom, and I just sort of mark that where I can cut that down to size, and because you kind of want the spine to fit the journal. And then I take the chipboard and I cut it. I make it just a little bit bigger, slightly bigger on both edges, because you want to be able to fit the journal, but you also want to be able to fit the things inside of it. So if I were to bulk up on the journal, then I would want to fit things in there. So then I cut out the chipboard, and you need to be careful when you use a razor, because I have cut my fingers so many times on accident. So just be careful if you use a razor blade, or you can use scissors. It just depends. I make my journal covers out of different things, but this time I decided to use chipboard and the cardboard cereal box. So now I'm going to glue this down and pin it and let it dry. And then, once it's all dry, I set it to the side. I take some watercolor paper and I start cutting the paper because I'm going to make some tags for the journal. I'm going to dye these up. And so this is just me ripping the paper up for that. And then I'm going to take some other pieces of paper that I've just had, pink papers and doilies and just different little odds and ends, cutouts that I've had, some lace trim, that sort of thing. And I'm just going to kind of figure out what I want to put inside of the journal. And so I just kind of cut and measure the trim and the pieces inside like I want it. And then basically I just start putting in the things into the journal. Here I started with some washi tape and some coffee filters that I had dyed and some doilies that had been torn but I can cut and use inside of the journal. And so then I just basically start and I just kind of flip through the journal and put things in where I think they need to go. It's kind of a process, and I work on it a few minutes at a time, and then I may put it aside for a while and then come back to it. But basically, I just go through and measure up different things and just put them in whenever I pull out the journal and look at it. And, it's just a creative process that I kind of go through. And so here is some video of that where I actually just went through the journal and just put some things in different places at different times. Here's some paper ribbon that I make on the sewing machine. And then I decided to make some paper clips, embellishments on the paper clips. So I have some little papers and things that I, make the paper clips on. And then after that, I tried to, or I like to stamp them, or just kind of cut little, what do you call that? Little tags at the bottom. But anyway, here they are. And then I decide that I'm going to stamp them and kind of make them look pretty with purple and pink and black ink and put some hearts on them. Barbie stuff. And so now I've got some offcuts from some cardstock pink, dark pink, and I'm going to take some napkins that I have, just one-offs that I have peeled back the layers from, and I'm going to decoupage on top of these tags and let them dry because I'm going to use them in the journal. And so once I get finished with this, I'm going to pull back out the book cover that's dry now, and we're going to cover it with the book cloth that we made the night before. And I'm going to first reinforce the spine with some tie-back tape. You don't have to use this specific tape. You can use fabric or whatever you want to use. I just had this and used it. And so I just put a piece down and reinforce the spine before I put the book cloth down. Then I've cut the book cloth down to about 1 inch around on all of the sides, and I'm basically just going to use my glue mixture and glue the pink down to the chipboard and make the cover of the book. And I'm just using a bone folder to kind of smooth anything out it lay down. And then I'm going to start working on the inside of the cover while that's drying. And so the first thing I do is I start with the spine. And so what I do is cut around where the spine's going to be. And I take that little piece and just go ahead and clip it in there and let that be drying on the spine so that it'll work in there nicely. And then I start working on the corners first, and I get those turned and glued down, and then I clamp them, and I do that for the rest of the four corners. And then I start working on the sides of the journal, and I just basically glue it down and clamp all of those down too. And I work my way all the way around the outside of the cover. And then once I'm finished with that, I just let it sit and dry. And so then once it's dry, I take all the clips off. And now I'm going to reinforce the inside of the spine with a piece of fabric. And of course, because it's Barbie, I'm going to use pink and purple. But I basically take the glue mixture and I glue it down. And that is the inside cover of the spine. And it's reinforced on both sides. And then that way you can't see the cereal box whenever the journal is complete. You can see the the purple fabric instead of the Cinnamon Toast Crunch box. And now here I've taken an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper and I've cut it in half and I've sewn around the edges. And now I'm going to fit that on the inside of the cover on both sides. And you can see some glue that's kind of dried on the outside of that, but we'll fix that later. But I basically just clamp all of this down and let it dry. And once it's dried, you won't be able to see it as bad. And then I pick out a piece of elastic for the closure of the cover, and I want to fit that and glue that down before I put down the back piece. So I get my hot glue gun out and I glue that down, and then I fit the piece of cardboard over top and then let that dry. And so after I finish that, I go ahead and do the inside pockets because I'm going to let that dry as well while I'm letting the whole cover dry. Now that it's dry, I've taken the clamps off. You can see the closure. It's an elastic closure that comes across the top. And so the next thing to do is to sew the signature inside of the journal. And so the first thing I do is just make sure that everything's going to fit in there, and I like the way it looks. I've gotten pretty close there. And so now I'm going to sew it in, and I make a template out of a piece of paper, and I just fold it in half and then take something sharp. Some people use an awl, some people use scissors. I just use whatever I could get my hands on, and then I just sort of mark where I want the holes. I don't make anything perfect, but I just sort of mark where I want it, and then I poke the holes into the template, and then I take the template and pin it down to the book, and then I poke the holes into the book first, and then I will take the same template and I will poke holes into the spine of the signature. And so here I clamp it down, and then I'm just going to take a sharp little tool and just stick through the holes that I've already pre-punched, and I do the spine first, and then I will take that out and put it inside of the signature, the same template, and pin it down, and then poke holes through the signature, which if you don't have something terribly sharp, it's a little hard to do, but you can get it done. And again, you can use anything sharp, little pokey scissors and anything like that. So now I use dental floss a lot of times in my books just because it's hard to really break dental floss. And so I take about an arm's length plus maybe a little bit, and then I thread it and I sew my signature into my book. And now a lot of people have a lot of different ways to sew their signatures in their book. I've watched a lot of tutorials, and I do it different every time. It just depends on how thick my signature is and what type of book I'm doing. I don't necessarily always use dental floss, but I've used embroidery thread before. I just find that something like thread or floss, waxed floss, holds better. It doesn't split as bad, and it's just something that I can work with. So everybody sews their books different. I don't necessarily do it the same every single time. It's close to the same, but again, it just depends on how thick the book is, how thick the signature is, and the spine on the book is. And so this one I sewed pretty good. I did five holes in the spine, and instead of 3, sometimes I'll do 3 if it's not as thick, but this time I did 5, and it went pretty good. I didn't have the sharpest needle. I couldn't find my good needle, but if you have a dull needle, sometimes it's harder, but then when I get finished, I just tie a knot in the center in a pretty little bow, and that's it. So now that it's done, it's the spine. I can see the thread on that. I'm not thrilled about this one. Sometimes I don't really mind, but this one I didn't like it. So I took a piece of extra of the book cloth that I did. I cut it down, and so now I'm going to glue it onto the spine and clamp it down to hide that threaded wax there. And so once it's done, that's it. And so I made some dots that had some gold on them just to hide some imperfections inside the journal. I've made another little tag there, and there's some doilies that I had dyed, and I had made some sentiments, just some Barbie quotes that I had printed out on sticker paper and inked. And then, of course, we've got the paper clips we made, and some tags and journal cards and other things. And so now basically it's just time to finish decorating the journal and put all of these elements inside of the journal. And again, this is sort of a process. I just go through and I have a mixture of stamping, and then I just glue things in. I just kind of look at it and see where I think things should go. But here's where I'm covering up some of those glue imperfections with just some circles that I cut out and put a little gold paint on. And I'm just going to glue those down. It hides imperfections, but it also is pretty decorative. So when you see that in there, you'll know. Sometimes I did it to cover up things. Sometimes I did it just because I think it's pretty. But basically, I just go through the rest of the journal and embellish it, put the tags in, put the quotes in, put everything in that I've made for it. And again, it's just kind of a process, but I'm really happy with how it turned out. So now I'm just flipping through the final journal and putting some extra little touches on the ends of the pages, and just flipping through the whole thing and making sure that each page has got a little something on there. I just love the way it turned out. So I appreciate you guys watching. I hope you loved this Barbie inspired journal, and thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it.